they didn't want my person.
I think that. Well, yeah. Carrie. Yeah.
Move it today.
Yeah.
I definitely.
Is that yours, Jake? That little beautiful girl?
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh my God, she's gorgeous. Hi.
Olivia.
Oh, hi, Olivia. Welcome to our meeting. Do you want to come up and sit in my chair and I'll sit in your chair?
It's like, oh.
It's bad enough he dragged me here. That's right.
There was a school that did
I'll
that.
never forget one of the first meetings I went to in the town of Clay. I showed up to like represent one of the hotel projects. Specifically picked on me and was like, you know, any kids that are here for participation in government for their high school credit, get their page signed, and I'm like, mine signed next to me. I'm like, oh man, young face thing's never gonna live it down, right?
I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Did you get extra credit?
No, we felt embarrassed for a while. He's still there too.
Didn't get approved.
Yeah.
Cute.
A little bit more compliment.
Okay, where are we going first?
Two things that were removed, or just
Yes.
two? Okay.
This, that one, and that one.
Yep. I saw it. I just don't remember.
Yep. She's so cute.
Funny that makes it.
I know.
There's
right.
not even anything there.
Yeah.
Nobody's there in parking.
It's $6 on the dollar.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Syracuse Planning Commission.
Thank you.
We have a series of public hearings for this evening. We will begin those momentarily, and before we do that, we have housekeeping business to take care of by way of minutes from our February 12th meeting. The minutes have been distributed to the commission members in advance. Is there a motion for action on our February 12th meeting minutes?
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The February 12th minutes are approved. We'll proceed to the public hearings listed for this evening. Oh, before we do that, it would be appropriate, I think, for an update on the agenda in terms of what remains on the agenda and what has been withdrawn, so that individuals who might be here for something that has been withdrawn don't waste their time and are free to enjoy the nice weather. Could you, Jake, just give us a quick update on those that have fallen off the agenda?
Yes, there are two new business items that are withdrawn at the moment. First one being major site plan review for 333 East Onondaga Street. That's MASPR-24-04 is being withdrawn, and also major site plan review for 613-17 Erie Boulevard West, MASPR-24-05 has also been withdrawn. That's
Okay,
it.
thank you. So if anyone is here for those, we won't be hearing those this evening. And if and when they return, the public will be notified in the same manner as was done for this evening's meeting. So that's the update. As we begin the public hearing, just by way of process for those who are unfamiliar with the hearing process that we use, as each application is identified by a member of the staff, we ask the applicant or the representative to come to the podium in the center aisle here, provide their name and address for the record, and then a brief summary of the application involved. Following questions from the commission members for clarification, we will invite members of the public who wish to speak in favor of the application to do that. And then we will also offer an opportunity for members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to the application to do that as well. Where comments are offered in opposition, we will encourage the applicant to return and address the comments made in opposition. So with that, let's begin with our first public hearing.
Okay. The first new business item is a street abandonment. It's AS-2024-02. It's the abandonment of a portion of East Genesee Street's right-of-way directly across the street from this building, City Hall Commons. It's on the screen. As you know, or many of you know, Genesee Street used to run through the backside of City Hall Commons and through the current intersection out front and continuing actually right towards Fireman's Park. So it's a portion directly across the street from us, but I'll have our Michael Lehman from the City of Syracuse get up to answer any questions on behalf of the project.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. As says Deputy Commissioner just described, we're looking to abandon a portion of that property just south of City Hall. We recently, similar proposition, it made it through the county a couple weeks ago, and their message basically was anytime we can abandon city-owned property for the purpose of private development, it's a good thing. Any questions about the property itself, or can describe a little bit about the future plans?
Just curious. I mean, I mean, it hasn't been a street there for what, 50 years or more?
I'm not sure, but decades,
how does it not
surely.
get abandoned a long time ago?
Because it's been used as a parking lot.
Parking
Okay.
lot.
Yep.
So, but it's going to be the whole parking lot, though, not just the area that was the street that gets abandoned?
Only the portion there, just below to
Outline
the
portion?
south. There's a building there right now. Immediately to the east is a parking lot, which is used by the apartment building, just the next parcel to the east. That's the only remaining portion of the parcel, which is owned by the city.
And the intent is to put a development in there that includes residential, correct?
Yes, we're in discussions with actually the owner of the building immediately to the south there. And we have a draft lease, draft purchase and sale agreement. The goal would be construction of an 8-story, 102,000 square foot, 72 dwelling unit building. 20% of the units will be set aside for low-income households. 25,000 feet of space will be allocated to commercial retail, And while they're in the process of putting that project together, the city will still have access to 10 spots.
Additional questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward. We have no speakers. We'll close the public comment. I'll turn to council and staff to ask if there's any additional pertinent information relative to this application that the commission should be aware of.
Nothing.
Okay. And just by way of process, this comes in the form of a recommendation from the commission to the council. Is that correct, for abandonment? Okay. All right.
Council will do seeker.
Okay. Because they're the final decision maker, as we just heard this evening. And if there are no further questions, is there a motion for action on this item, AS 2024-02, the street abandonment?
Can I make a clarification? I do believe that the code for this is supposed to be SA, not AS. I think that was a clerical mistake, just in case that creates a problem in the future for reference.
Oh,
And I move approval of the application as presented for SA 2024-02.
discussion on the motion before us. If there's no discussion,
I do have a question for staff, if I could just ask. Because there's a mention about an electrical panel that needs to be part of a resolution, should we move on that here, or is that something the Common Council would do?
Yeah.
You might, I mean, it's on the record now, but I think that when it comes forward for development, what Jake was just saying.
Yeah, well, we
Which
were
he can
just,
tell you.
yeah, not trying to not disclose it, but this is the formal way to abandon a city street. So physically looking at it, I mean, I don't think many people realize that it's still technically a city street. So this is the process to get it to no longer be formally recognized as a city street. So from there, obviously, this proposed project could fall through. But the point of it is all of that would come back before this agency and potentially others for site plan and other other needs. So I think we can wait until that point for those things. This is definitely required. Obviously, legally, this is still a street. It's still part of the city-owned right-of-way, which is different than the city owning a private parcel the same way, I own my property or, you own your property, for example. So we're trying to get it to that point, and then I think other evaluations can be made beyond that when projects are proposed.
okay. Good clarification.
The key right now is just the abandonment. It's like nothing else can really happen until it's abandoned.
Correct. Yeah, it's no different than a actual street that exists today if we were going to abandon it, even though a street isn't actually there anymore. Legally, it still is.
Further discussion or questions? Then all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? The motion is approved for the street abandonment. And then, as mentioned at the outset of the meeting, the next two items on the printed agenda, the site plan reviews, one for East Onondaga Street and the second for Erie Boulevard West. have been withdrawn by their respective applicants. And that takes us to our next hearing on a re-subdivision.
The next new business item is a re-subdivision R-24-01 located at 901 North Clinton Street and 931 North Clinton Street. Applicant David Aiken with Pyramid Management.
Good evening, members of the board and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. What's reflected on the screen in yellow is what currently has an address of 901 North Clinton Street, and what's red is 931 North Clinton Street. Those with a deep familiarity with the lakefront area will remember that Court Street was realigned, and so we have just over 3 acres to the southeast corner of the intersection and 1.05 acres to the northwest corner of the intersection. And from a developable perspective, we're just simply asking that the properties be subdivided so everything that sits within parcel 117-0601.3 towards downtown, if you will, is its own parcel, and then we own the adjoining parcel. So the request is that those parcels, be merged for development purposes, down the road. So from my perspective, this is administratively, cleaning up something that we probably should have done several years ago. Not as many as 50 years ago, Mr. Lentz, but.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant?
You have any idea of what the potential future development would be?
Don't have a specific development at this point. Obviously, we followed very closely rezoned Syracuse. This is in, MX4, and so looking to complement that appropriately, but we don't have a development plan at this point in time.
Further questions?
David, I just want to confirm the road is abandoned,
Correct.
and you've done that. That's all filed.
Correct.
That's done.
Correct.
So we're going to take that part of the road and put it in parcel 1, basically,
Correct.
essentially,
That's it.
and create 2
Yes.
rectangles, if I read it correctly.
You are correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come to the podium. There are no additional speakers apparently, so we will close the public comment. I turn again to council and staff. Any additional information that the commission should be aware of for this particular application? Nope.
None.
Okay, good. Thank you, both. In that case, we are at a point to consider our seeker action on this application, R-24-01.
Has everybody had a chance to review the short EAF Part 1 that the applicant prepared? All right. And with renewed enthusiasm now, is everyone familiar with the questions of the short EAF Part 2?
Yes.
Do any of you believe that the project will have any small, moderate, or large impacts?
Not large, not large.
Okay. Because you do not believe there will be any moderate to large impacts, I recommend you vote to issue a negative declaration under seeker and complete the EAF Part 3 accordingly.
Thank you. Is there such a motion?
Move to establish the planning commission as a lead agency for purposes of seeker and find a negative declaration.
Second.
Thank you both. Discussion on the seeker motion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? That motion is approved. And we may now entertain a motion on the re-subdivision itself.
I move to approve the application as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? R-24-01 is approved. Thank you. We move to our next public hearing.
The next new business item is also a re-subdivision, R-24-04 at 521-23 Park Avenue. Owner, applicant Baxter Hankin. This is in the R2 zone district.
Hi, I have an additional piece of information for people to consider. I have a rendering, so you can pass those around. I only have 6 of them. But
Can you just introduce yourself, name
Yes.
and address for the record?
Hi, I'm Baxter Hankin. My address or the address of the property?
Your address, please.
220 South Warren Street, apartment 502.
Just to introduce this to the board, so this application is a re-subdivision, but the proposal is to split, obviously, 2 lots, or 1 lot into 2, but there's proposal for development on each afterwards. So I believe that's what is in front of you, is some renderings of what's to come. So, but I'll let the applicant speak about the resub and then what he's proposing afterward.
So I'm proposing to re-subdivide 521 to 23 Park Avenue into 2 lots, one smaller lot to contain a single-family attached home, the other to contain a duplex, all as of right under the new rezone.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the applicant?
A question, I'm not sure if it's the applicant or for staff, but we have a comment about the possibility of a setback issue for one of the lots. Is that because you haven't calculated the setback on the block that's fully developed, or I'm just kind of curious about that comment or what that problem might be.
So I know that under the new rezone, R2 allows either a 4-foot side setback or a 0-foot setback for 0 lot line buildings.
So this line right here, this is not a common wall. This would be a common wall, so there's no setback, but this would be.
Okay, so it was on the side that was a problem, not on the front.
So there is no site plan of your application yet.
Right. Good. Got it, thanks. Appreciate it.
Additional questions for the applicant?
What are the sizes of like these units? Like square footage wise?
The 2 on the ends are each roughly 960 square feet, and the one in the middle is 1,850 square feet. But this is still conceptual, so there's some possibility for change there.
Do you know what that change could be or might be?
I anticipate that the sizes of the 3 units would stay the same. Of course, if there is a setback needed at the western end of the site, next to the home on the ends, then I would have to reassess the design. But otherwise, I'm planning to keep it the same as it is.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come to the podium, provide your name, address, and comments. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward to the podium. No, we have no additional speakers. Once again, I turn to council and staff. Are there any other pertinent pieces of information that would be relevant for the commission to consider for this application?
Not relevant to the subdivision itself.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Okay. In that case, we are in a position to consider our seeker action.
Has everybody had a chance to review the short form EAF Part 1?
Yes.
Okay, and is everyone familiar with the questions on the short EAF Part 2?
Yes.
And does anyone believe the project will have any moderate to large impacts?
No.
Okay, because you do not believe there will be any moderate to large impacts, I recommend you vote to issue a negative declaration under seeker and complete the EAF Part 3 accordingly.
Is there a motion to that effect?
Move to establish the planning commission as a lead agency for purposes of seeker and find a negative declaration of impact.
Second.
No, you want it.
I knew that was going to happen. So I didn't say anything.
Arm wrestle. Okay, discussion on the motion. If not, all in favor of the seeker motion indicate please by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Seeker motion is approved. Is there a motion on the re-subdivision, R-24-04?
Motion to approve this re-subdivision.
Second. Oh, Walter and I are great minds, think alike.
Discussion on the motion before us. And all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? The re-subdivision R-24-04 is approved. That completes our new business for this evening. And we have several items of old business.
First old business item is re-subdivision R-23-71 at 420 and 430 East Genesee Street. Applicant Brian Bouchard.
Seeking extra credit.
Thank you. Good evening. Yeah, so Brian Bouchard with CHA Consulting. So I'm the 300 South State Street, Syracuse. I'm the project engineer representing the owner and developer for this. The re-subdivision is actually a companion piece to a site plan review application that's probably next. If we don't want to talk about them in tandem, I can just tell you that the intent is to take the two existing parcels and combine them into one proposed parcel to facilitate the redevelopment project that we'll discuss in just a second. They're being combined because there are some where the existing property line is that splits the two buildings. It's essentially a zero lot line on the face of that building. And there are existing windows and there are building code related issues with the relationship of a building face to its property line in terms of the glazing and the ability to access natural light from those windows. It will be redeveloped as one singular project, so the intent is to combine them into one contiguous parcel.
Questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Let's pause and see if there are individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application, and if they wish to do so, come to the podium, please, providing name, address, and comments. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application? Please come to the podium, provide your name, address, and comments. No one's moving to the podium. I think we have no additional speakers on this application. Again, I turn to council and staff to ask if there's any additional information of which the commission should be aware before proceeding on this.
I have none, thank you, Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Not for the resub.
Okay, thank you.
Ajik, I just want to confirm that the engineer signed off on the resub drawing. I know that there was a discrepancy earlier on. Christian?
I can answer that if I could.
Okay.
So we did speak with the mapping division of the engineering office, and there is a typographical error on the azimuth and bearing of the East Genesee Street existing property line. We will resubmit a final plat for signature by the engineering office prior to filing. So we have many signatures to get as this goes through that process, and that final map is what your mapping division will use to compare the records for the city's right-of-way versus the mapped property, and it will be corrected as part of the filing process.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Other comments? Okay, and where did we leave off on this? So we're then in a position to consider seeker action.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review the short EAF Part 1?
Yes.
And is everyone familiar with the short EAF Part 2 contained in your packet prepared by staff?
Yes.
Do you believe this project will have any moderate to large impacts?
No.
Okay, because you do not believe there will be any moderate to large impacts, I recommend you vote to issue a negative declaration under seeker and complete the EAF Part 3 accordingly. And I'll just add to that you do not need to declare yourself a lead agency if you're the only agency looking at this, which for a subdivision resub you are.
Is there such a motion then?
Move to declare a negative seeker finding?
Negative declaration.
Negative declaration.
Second.
Discussion on the seeker motion? All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? The seeker motion is approved, and we may now proceed to action on the re-subdivision for R-2371.
I move approval of the re-subdivision application as presented.
Discussion on this motion. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Re-subdivision for R-2371 is approved. And it's a good thing you didn't go far. We now have our next item. Jake, could you introduce that, please?
Yes, companion piece is a major site plan review, MASPR-23-08 for 420 and 430 East Genesee Street. Applicant is also Brian Bouchard.
Thank you. Good evening again. So Brian Bouchard, 300 South State Street, Syracuse. So for the redevelopment portion of this project, again, it's 420 and 430 East Genesee Street, and we already acknowledged that the two existing parcels will be combined into one. The site, just to describe it to you, it's located right along East Genesee Street. It's actually only a block and a half away from here. It's directly south of the Syracuse Firefighters Memorial Park that kind of spans the 400 block of Genesee Street, and our neighbors to the west are the County Sheriff's Office. Then we have McCarthy Ave to the rear, which is to the bottom of the page there. Both buildings are in the existing MX5 zoning district. And the proposed project, the majority of the redevelopment is for interior renovations to create new residential housing units. So there's no significant building alterations, no new construction of buildings, and the exteriors of these facades will remain largely intact, which I'll talk about shortly. What you're looking at here is a presentation of the site plan, which is fairly minimal rework to reorganize the parking lot The parking area is a little bit disconfigured and has some double-stacked parking spaces that wouldn't be convenient for the tenants. So we have parking lot improvements along with sidewalks and some circulation that we're changing as well for fire access. But I'll go through a couple specifics in a second. We've worked on this a lot in terms of its historic preservation, which was really the main focus of this project, if you're familiar with either of these buildings. 420, which is kind of the building that's in the center of the project here, give you a little bit of history about both, is actually a two-story steel frame office building built in 1956, and it was designed by the prominent architect King & King, local architect. It was actually constructed and occupied by them throughout the 50s and 60s, and it's considered one of their firm's earliest commissions within the international style. We applied to the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service, which provided their acceptance to the eligibility to place that building on the National Historic Places Registry with the available, historic windows and the cladding that's on it and its general appearance are the things that are desired to be preserved with that architecture. 430 is a little bit more ornate of a building. This was actually the former Boys Club of Syracuse, and it was designed by Melvin King in 1922 and was a purpose-built clubhouse for the local boys chapter here. It's a 5-story design within the collegiate Gothic style, and it actually operated as the boys club until about the 1980s when it was converted to a law office. It has also been nominated to the listing on the National Historic Places Registry. Both buildings are vacant. In fact, 430 has been vacant for almost 10 years now. The interior is in quite disrepair. The exterior and its structure envelope are pretty good. And 420 served as an office building and law office shortly after the architects moved out, but it's also been vacant for several years. So if you could go to back to the site plan. Our proposal is to renovate the interior of both buildings, which is going to provide 57 dwelling units, which are a mix of studios 1s and 2s. 420 is 2 stories, has 21 units in it. 430 has 36 units in it. And the project will comply with the 10% affordable units, and we actually received today our certification by Neighborhood and Business Development for the certifications of those affordable units. Last week we spent some time with the BZA because we did need a variance specific to allowing ground floor units on this very particular project, understanding that the code is new. This is in the MX5 district, to which ground floor units are generally restricted, but because of these being existing buildings and the desire to renovate them, there are a lot of peculiar, unique situations within each of the buildings that were justifiable for allowing that within this circumstance, and those variances were approved based on justifications relating to the undesirable nature of commercial space on the first floor in these units. Obviously, the buildings have been vacant for a significant amount of time, so if they were marketable as commercial space, part of the reason is because they are historic. 430 has a submerged first level. It's actually slightly below ground level, so it would be less desirable. Ceiling heights, what's existing in there, are not really comparable to other modern commercial space. And obviously the financial aspect of it, the project will be receiving historic tax credits to preserve the buildings and not knock them down. And there is significant incentives for those tax credits, which require that the building envelope and the exterior facades don't change in terms of storefront windows and some of the other things that might be needed to accommodate commercial space. So those variances were approved. The proposed site that you're looking at, we're going to maintain the ingress driveway on Genesee Street, which is on the west side of the 420 building, to access our parking lot. Currently, you come into the parking lot and you have to leave through the very narrow alleyway that's between 430 and 420. It also creates a pretty prominent blind spot between those two buildings as people are walking down the street, and we know that this is obviously part of the connective corridor. So our proposal is to close that very narrow ingress and egress driveway and to create a pedestrian alley there, which is also going to benefit the residents and not having vehicular traffic go through there. And we are going to create an exit drive back out onto McCarthy. This also improves fire access because there'll be a through movement for the fire truck instead of a dead-end movement where the fire truck is not able to get between the narrow pass that exists today between those two buildings. We've also restriped and repaved the site and added green space along McCarthy to address some of the city's comments from forestry to provide shade trees and landscaping. We will, as reconstructing the parking lot, also be providing a stormwater management system to the benefit of the city's sewer infrastructure. And we'll also be completing sanitary sewer offset mitigation work related to the increase or the difference in sewer flows compared to the existing in the proposed, which will be part of the design process going into permitting. Some of the comments that Christian and I and staff talked about today is the dumpster. We've placed it at the entrance drive for facilitating the pickup movement, and there was some comment, I'll just say, to try and find a better spot for it. And I think now that we've closed that egress driveway, we're going to try and tuck that dumpster further into the backside of the parking lot so that it's not as close to Genesee Street. And I looked at that today with the owner, and we should be able to still accommodate the same number of parking spaces. Obviously, parking spaces aren't required in MX5, but he's desirable of the, I believe, 30 parking spaces that we're providing. So we'll move the dumpster, we'll take out 2 spaces that are at the dead end area of the parking stall to accommodate that dumpster in a more hidden location, and add 2 spaces back to the angled parking right up against the entrance to Genesee Street. We've addressed transportation comments, which were fairly minor, adding some bollards to protect vehicles and traffic, modified some curbing, and added the necessary bike racks. Forestry, we addressed the shade trees, and engineering had comments related to the drainage, the stormwater design, and obviously securing any permits that are needed for construction. So we take no exception to any comments that the city's provided to date. And with that, turn it over to the board for any questions.
Great overview. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for the applicant?
Not really a question, Brian, but just, I was at the BZA meeting. There was a very robust and I think very good discussion about the trade-off between the MX5 and the desirability of having commercial space on front floor, or first floor, which drives pedestrian traffic, et cetera, but that these 2 buildings have been vacant for a considerable period of time, and it does not appear to be desirable commercial space, and commercial space is in excess in the city. So it does seem to be an appropriate action to make the change that was made by the BZA in terms of the first floor.
Yep, and that was a good summary of the BZA meeting, understanding that we have a new zoning and we should be supportive of it, right? There's a lot of new construction that's coming to you that should be obligated to provide first floor commercial space because they have flexibility to design that space within their project. But certainly there was a long list of justifications that we went through with the board, and you stated them very eloquently there, so thank you.
You might have touched on it, but see here there's a comment from the engineering stormwater, and they just mentioned that proposed site should be graded appropriately to prevent stormwater runoff and sheet flow from rooftop to driveway.
Correct.
How are you guys addressing that comment?
I could talk to you in a couple different points. So one is that a portion of the driveway sits higher than the street currently. So the site actually does fall away and kind of just falls onto the sidewalk and the street. So we will be reconstructing the parking lot such that the sidewalk at both ends is essentially a high point and everything can sheet flow and be collected to an underground chamber system that'll store and manage the rates of runoff leaving the site to the benefit of the city's sewer infrastructure. The buildings are basically gutted at this point, so we are taking all roof drainage and rerouting it in the basements to connect it directly to that stormwater management system.
Okay, I guess this is a question for staff. I'm just curious. It mentions it should be graded appropriately. What would be the appropriate grade? Okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
He's referring to making sure that there are everything is graded appropriately such that it drains to our site and is collected by our site instead of private property flowing out into the city right away. Yeah. Yep.
Don't say that. So key to point out, like this work would require a building permit for site work. drainage plan would be reviewed as part of that, so a continuation of what Brian's describing, which our city engineering department would review and inspect for.
Okay, and then it also just mentions like a stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Yes.
Yeah, again, so there's different thresholds. The city has a very conservative threshold. If you disturb any portion of a site that exceeds 10,000 square feet, you have to still provide New York State compliant stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is both during construction, how do we manage and mitigate sedimentation and runoff so that it doesn't trespass off the site. There's provisions for construction equipment to be washed and keeping the street clean for construction. And then part of that pollution prevention plan is also post-construction, where once the site is stabilized for the next 50, 100 years, we are managing and treating stormwater in an appropriate fashion that's paid for and obligated through maintenance agreements that we execute with the city by the developer.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I don't have any other questions. Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward, providing your name, address, and comments. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come to the podium. So no additional speakers. We'll pause, touch base with staff and council to see if there are any additional facts that the commission should be aware of before proceeding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any comments.
I just have one letter to pass out to the commission members. This is from the city's Commissioner of Neighborhood and Business Development, just confirming what Brian said, that this proposal does in fact conform to the affordability requirements within the new zoning ordinance, that the owner's committed to, obviously, the 57 units total. 10% of that would be, 6 units. So this letter details that and just states that the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development will continue to track those rents and certifications for that annually, and that all of this conforms to the code.
Great. So just to note that the date of the letter is today's date from the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. We'll add that to the record. Any additional information?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. We are at a point where we will now entertain our seeker action on this project.
Has everyone had a chance to review the short EAF Part 1?
Yes.
Is everyone familiar with the questions of the short EAF Part 2?
Yes.
Does anyone believe this project will have any moderate to large impacts?
No.
No.
Because you do not believe there will be any moderate to large impacts, I recommend you vote to issue a negative declaration under seeker and complete the EAF Part 3 accordingly.
Is there such a motion?
Move to establish the planning commission as the lead agency for purposes of seeker and make a negative seeker declaration.
Second.
Discussion on the seeker motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? Seeker motion is approved, and we may now proceed to the action on MASPR-23-08.
Move to approve the application as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion on the motion before us. If there's no discussion, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? Site plan review at 42430 East Genesee Street is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, commission members, and I want to thank Jake and his staff too, because, worked with the old zoning code a lot, and there's very particular places you got to look in the new zoning code, so Christian's constantly, kind of quarterbacking the newer interpretation that I think myself and other consultants have to make within the code. So having the staff, here to help us through that as we get our feet under us with,
Wealth of expertise.
yeah, exactly. So, thank you.
Thank
They're
you.
making the pool functional, huh?
Yeah. We will be reusing the pool space, so for those of you who don't know, the Boys Club had a pool. A component of the restoration is to maintain, if you saw, I think there was a news article, if not, if it hasn't been posted yet, we talked to the news. The apron and mosaic tile is still original 1922 around the pool, and in its former use, it's been covered over with like a wood platform. And so we'll be showing the mosaic tile, and the wood platform will still support the ability to use that space as a flexible space for the fitness center. So it won't be an actual pool, but there's a cool photo if they ended up putting it in the newspaper of like all the boys back in a black and white photo in 1920, like all hanging out in the new pool when it opened. So, yeah. But thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. We have additional business this evening. I think just one item.
That's correct. The last item is under other business. It's a 3-mile limit re-subdivision in the town of Onondaga, 3S-24-02. This is on Young Road, and owner Eric Gantley. The city engineering department has approved this re-subdivision.
That was my question. So with that assurance, any questions on this 3-mile limit case from the town of Onondaga?
You know, this application piqued my interest because the comprehensive plan has just come out from the county, and there was a presentation last Thursday with the mayor and the county executive talking about the fact that we don't want to have developments in green space, et cetera, but they're not asking for the sewer. There's individual septic tanks, so it's consistent with the comprehensive plan so far as that goes. It's interesting timing on this application, given that issue.
Other comments? If not, is there a motion for action on this 3-mile limit
Move to approve the application.
case?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? 3S-2402 is approved. If there's no other business to come before the commission, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? We stand adjourned until 3 weeks from tonight, when we will be on daylight savings
Yeah.
time.
Oh, we will.
I said 3 weeks, right?
Did you? Yeah, you did.
26th,
Well, maybe I
right?
didn't.
25th.
I thought so.
That was a great training.
Yeah.
Like that, I was just sitting there, I was just like,